Hey you, this is Jasim from Codeband, and in this video I'm gonna be showing you how to update a to-do in our project. So if you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe my channel and click the bell icon near to it. So without any further, let's jump right into it. Alright guys, so in the last lecture we have talked about the form validation steps, and we have done that and we have created a to do. Now in this lecture, now if you didn't watch those previous videos, please do watch those. I'll put the link in the description section for the playlist, and please do watch and follow along. So in this video we're going to talk about updating it to do. So I'll just show you the complete project here. This is the completed project, so that you get a better idea of what we are going to be accomplishing. So if you click on this specific to do, I'll just click in the update. Now it will redirect me to a new route, and this route is something like /update/. Now this is the ID. This is the ID of that title. Now this changes. If I go to this to do, it changes 16. Now this is dynamically changing, so that's the first thing to note. Now if I change this one to be to do, Codeband. Now if I click update, then it redirects to the home page, but it changed that to do HGHFH changed to Codeband. So that's how the whole working of the application is. If you click on the update, it gives me this route /update/ID. Now if I do something like change this one and click on update, then a post request is generated onto a separate URL, and it redirects me back to this one, but with updating that to do itself. So that's the whole idea of updating. So what we have in here in our controller, we have the store function, which is responsible for creating a new to do. Now in the resources views, we have the update.blade.php, which is this template. Whenever we click the update, this is the template that is the update.blade.php. And what I'm gonna do now is in the routes web.php, I'm gonna create a new route, so that this specific route, and I'll just say route, then calling get. Now it is a get route, it is a get request. Now the path, I'll put something like this one. You can of course transform it and reverse it, no issues with that. You can of course say like /ID/update, no issue with that, but I'll stick with /update/15 or /update/ID. So I'll just do this one /update/. Now herein the dynamic ID should be there. So in order to do that, in order to fetch dynamic things, all you have to do is put a curly brace and close it, and in here you just pass in a variable name, suppose ID or PK or anything similar, or to do. You can of course name that, that's up to you. Now I'll stick with ID, so /update/ID. Now this will be dynamic, and in here I'll pass the control to do controller, and I will make a function, or let me say it as edit, and I'll put the name to as edit. Now with this being said, now anything that comes like /update/15 or /update/16 will go to this edit one. Now we need to fetch that ID right in that controller method, that is in the edit method. Now I'll just create a new method here, public function. I'll name it as edit, and it I'll talk about it. It receives in the argument that we have passed into this route itself, so it is ID. So you can of course name this one to be whatever you like, such as you can name this to do or PK or ID itself, no issues with that. Now whatever here will receive whatever you entered in the route. So if it was like /update/15, then you'll get the 15 right in here as the first argument. So I'll just dd that one, so that you get a better understanding of what's going around. Now my server is running, my exam is running. Now if this is our current application. Now if I type in something like slash update slash let me say it as something like 37, then it gives me that 37. So whatever you passed in, it's there in the controller. Now you can of course change the name. I'll just name it to do, and if I dd that to do, and that'll give me the exact same result. You can also change the name here as well, no issues with that. You can change this name as well to something like to do, no issues with that. So if that being said, now all I have to do is, I want to fetch that to do object, which means, if I come back in here, I'll show you an example. If I click in the update, it goes to this URL. Now the title is pre-filled with whatever the contents, whatever the previous content is. Now we need to get that functionality. We need to fetch that object and inject that value to this title input field. So in order to do so, all I have to do is, there are a couple of methods of doing it. I'll show you the step by step. I'll show you those methods step by step. So I'll first show you the easiest method, I should say, but it is prone to errors, which you will understand at the end. Now all I have to do is, just say a variable to do is equal to. Now I'll just convert this back into ID. $to do is equal to, now our to do object, our to do model, colon, then you could of course say like find. There is a method called find. Find takes in the ID as the argument. We can just pass in this ID. Now it will find an element which matches with that ID. So if the ID matches, then it returns an element, otherwise it will return null. So you can of course return the view. Now the view is update.blade.php, so just update, and you just pass in an array which has the key to do, and the value is equal to $to do. Now you have access to that to do object in the update.blade.php. Now instead of doing this way, you can also do a much cleaner way, which is nothing but using the compact function. So I'll just say compact and the name that we have to pass, which means this one. This to do, we have to pass this to do. Now this essentially is equivalent to passing an associative array with a key to do and a value of and a value of $to do. This essentially is the same thing. Now you have access to in the update.php, update.blade.php with the same key, with the same to do itself. So you can of course use this way or the other. Either one is preferred. This is much more cleaner. So with that being said, now in the update.blade.php, you have access to that title, that to do object, and herein you can pass in the value is equal to, value property is equal to, just dynamic content $to do. We passed in like that, and you can access the title prop, and that's it. Now if I save and if I just do this update slash 37 again, I'll get the code. Now this is my ID 37. In your case, you might not have that. So in order to check that, you can go to PHP, the my admin section, and in there you can find, if I go into my database, to do DB, and in here the to do section, you can of course find I have one item with the ID of 37. Now in your case, you might have several items with several IDs, and you just do that stuff here, that ID here. We are not yet updated this one, updated this route. If we click in here, it goes nowhere. So we need to update this one so that we don't have to manually type in like slash update slash 37 and all. So the logic is of course working perfectly. We get that ID. Now we need to update, and before doing that, I will just get this button working. So this is home.blade.php. This one in the home.blade.php, this is what it is responsible for, the update button. So in the hash, in the href, I'll just say route. If the button is clicked, then go to route. The name of the route is edit. We have, I believe it is edit. It is edit. Now in the edit section, we need to pass the ID, right? We are expecting that ID to be there, so we need to pass that ID. Now in here we have access to that specific object, specific to do, so we can just pass the ID as comma $to do, then ID. That's it. We have access to that specific to do. This is a loop, so each item we have access to that ID itself. So this will be dynamic. So with that being said, now if I run this again, if I refresh and click on update, I'll get that update /37 with that object there. So this is working perfectly fine. Now the problem with, I have said that there are a couple of ways of doing, fetching the item, fetching the to do. Now the problem with this method is, if I go to something like the ID that doesn't exist, then it gives me trying to get property title of non-object, which means it'll returns null if the find method returns null if the corresponding ID doesn't matches. So we pass in null here, and we try to fetch the title of a null object that does not exist, and that gives the error. So in order to do that, in order to get workaround, all you have to do is you have to check something like if not $to do, which means if $to do is null, then you can just return abort for not for, which means return for not for page, return not found, and this will suffice. Now if I go again here, now it'll return that 404. Now there is a handy solution for this one, that is the second method of fetching, which is nothing but just $to do is equal to, or to do model find or fail. Now this is a method, a model method, which means find or fail means if it is found, then it will assign it to do, otherwise just give the for not for error. So it will do that automatically for us. Now here we pass the ID itself. So if we save this one, and if we go back again here, it gives me that 404, but without those checking if this is null or not. So that's working perfectly. If I go back into 37, it does the same exact thing. So that's working. Now there is also another convenient way. You can of course ignore this line too, and that's the concept called route model binding. Now it is nothing but if this is the case, now I have the to do variable here. Now if I name this one the exact same $to do, and I type hind. Now type hind means you just say that this belongs to the to do model. Now this is an object of to do. Now if this is the case, if both the names are same, and we type hind this object as to do model, now if I dd this one, this to do $to do, if I dd that, and if I refresh this page, I get that same exact thing. I'm getting that instance. You could of course see that in the attributes. I'm getting the same exact thing. Instead of doing in this line, now we get it there, right in there with this one, with the route model binding concept. Now provided all you have to do is your route and model should have the same name, which means if this is something like ID, then this should be also an ID, $ID. So $ID will be a to-do object, a to-do instance. Laravel will automatically fetch that corresponding ID matching instance there for you. So if I again say $ID, now if I do this again, I get the same exact stuff. Now if I change this to something like to-do, which is not equal to this one what we passed in here, it will fail for sure. Now if I say $to do, and if I refresh this page, we no longer get those attributes right in here. We get an empty array. So that's the important thing to note here. So you can of course, I'll put a link in the description section so that you can have a better understanding on the route model binding. I'll put the official documentation link in the description. So with that being said, now all I have to do is I'll just convert this back to do so that it makes sense. This one is a to do object. Now I don't need this line. It will just pass this to do into the update.blade.php. So with that being said, now we'll get the exact same working. That's it. Now I want to note that if the ID doesn't match, which means if this one, I'll say like 117 or the ID that doesn't exist, then it automatically gives me the for not for error. That's also the feature of the route model binding. So with that being said, we have this up and running. Now the thing we have to do is, if we click the update stuff here, the update button, presently it is, it doesn't do anything. It will give me the pause method is not supported, and that's because we haven't set it up. Now if I click update, it should go to another route, preferably like slash let me say that slash edit or I'll do something like this one. I'll just convert this route into slash edit slash to do, and I will make a new route so that we can update the thing. Actually, it will be the post request, which means we are updating the object. So we are changing in the database. So we need to use post request, and we should say like slash update slash again the same thing. Now this edit displays the form to be for the to do to be updated. Now this one will make that updates work. So slash update slash to do, I'll make a new function in the to do controller. I'll say this as update, and the name I'll say this as update. Now with this being said, we can now create a new function which is responsible for actually updating the object. So I'll say this as update, and in here it receives two things, like which means it can receive the to do, as well as it can receive the request, which means we need the request because we need to validate whether whatever the user, if the user typed in empty data and click update, we need to validate that. So the previous logic that we have written here, this one, we need the request object so that we have access to whatever the user typed in. So a request, $request, and also we need this one. All right, we need we need to know the ID of the object to be updating. So by getting this route model binding concept, we can of course get that object right in there instead of this ID itself. Now we have the object that matches that ID. So what I'm doing is, I have to update that object. So there are a couple of ways of doing it. Now the first way, the first thing you have to notice, you have to validate the request. So I'll just copy this stuff right in here, and I'll just paste. Now that is, the request is validated. Now all I have to do is, the first method of doing it is, we have the to do object here. So I can just say $to do. Then I can just change that title property. So $to do title is equal to, then whatever you received from the validated data. So validated data is of course an associative array with those key, and the value is whatever the user typed in. So I can say like $validated data of title. Now this one will be the validated data, whatever the user entered. You can of course DD this stuff to get a better understanding. Now that's I'll not be doing that. You can of course DD $validated data of this title. You can of course check whatever the content is. It's nothing but the title itself. So with this being said, I need to say now to do save so that it updates the object. So with this being said, the object is updated. Now I'll redirect to which page. I'll preferably say like the route, name of the route is home. Now what this does is, in the web.php, we have the named route home. So it will just which is nothing but the home page itself. So I'm just redirecting back to the home page. Now with this being said, now if I save that, and I'll start from the first one. This one, I'll update this code and I'll update this to something like code band, and if I click update, nothing happens because we haven't set up the update.blade.php. So if I go to update.blade.php, the action is still hash. We need to change the action to this one, to this route. So in order to do that, all I have to do is, I can just say route, then the name of the route is update, and I need to pass in the ID. It is expecting the ID here. It is expecting the ID. So in Blade, I have access to the to do object, which means this I have passed the to do object right into the update.blade.php, so that I have access Now you can just say like, just pass in a comma and say $to do ID. So it will automatically pass that ID into this field right in here. So with that being said, now yeah, since this is a post request, I have to say at CSRF, and with everything being saved, I'll just refresh this page and I'll just start over. I'll go to home page and click update and say like code band and click update here. It just updated that to code band, and that's working perfectly fine. Now this is a working example of the updating stuff. Now the other method of doing this, instead of doing this way, you can always use something like $to do. We have that to do object, and there is a method called update, and you just pass in the associative array right in here with the title, or I could say like, I can always say like $title, and I can say like the $validated data of title. Now this is totally fine, but we don't have to explicitly say that. We can just say like pass in this whole array, Now if there was multiple fields, it will take care of that. So I can just say like update validated data. Now it will just update that thing. If I save that, and if I let me update this again, code band number 2, let me say that update, and it gives me that update. So that's working perfectly fine. Now everything, the whole update logic is working perfectly fine. Now this is all about this video. Now if you have any doubts or if you fell into some errors, please let me know in the comment section. This has got a bit lengthier because there are a lot of things you have to grasp, like the route model binding and all those stuff. I'll put the links to the official documentation in the description section so that you can refer those. And that's it, guys. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please do subscribe my channel and click the bell icon near to it. So thank you for watching. We'll see you in the next one.